Hello and welcome to this webinar on resilient farm and food system finance. This is part of our Clean Portfolio project and for the first of a series of webinars on constructing clean portfolios for climate solutions. My name is Christy Electris. I am the Senior Associate and co-founder of Croatan Institute. Croatan Institute is a independent nonprofit research institute whose mission is to harness the power of investment for social good and ecological resilience. And we do that by working at the critical nexus of where sustainability, finance, and economic development intersect. We have a headquarters in Durham, North Carolina, and our headquarters are Amy Bogie and our president Josh Humphreys are joining us remotely as well. You can see them on the video, as well as I believe Kristen Lang and Matt Aitken may also be joining remotely. And we have a network team in New York and Switzerland as well. So we will have plenty of time for questions and discussion after the brief presentations of all the speakers today. So feel free to type questions into the Q&A box that appears on your screen. You just click on the Q&A box and add your questions. Our team will curate them during the discussion period and group them and bring them to the discussion. You can also use the chat box to ask any technical questions. Amy will be responding to those. You can also email her directly if you need to at amy@croataninstitute.org, AMY, Amy. So on this webinar, we're going to talk about how investors working in various asset classes, such as fixed income, private debt, and real assets, are making food and agriculture investments that generate positive impacts on communities and the climate. The conversation will begin with a framing discussion on new mechanisms for financing regenerative agriculture with Delta Institute. David LeZaks is coming from Delta Institute, followed by a panel discussion moderated by Croatan Institute, featuring investors representing various asset classes, including Craig Wishner from Farmland LP, Alyssa Greenspan from Community Capital Management, and Dave Miller from Iroquois Valley Farmland REIT. Clean Portfolio Project is developing total portfolio approaches to fossil-free investing in integrated climate solutions. Our work for this project began when we helped develop a Divest-Invest conference track for SOCAP 15. Croatan Institute, along with a consortium of organizations, successfully launched the first iteration of a high-impact fossil-free clean portfolio at SOCAP 2016. It was called the Divest-Invest Clean 15 portfolio, which highlights 15 investable strategies across 5 major asset classes in themes ranging from renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure, to organic agriculture and clean technology. It was geared towards institutional investors. We then participated in the SOCAP 17 conference in San Francisco as an event partner, highlighting the project and the work of its sponsors. And then we've held investor events in New York, San Francisco, and at the Croatan Forum this past fall in Durham, North Carolina. And we hope to continue to host both these types of events, both in person and through this online webinar format, in order to roll out the clean portfolios and explore the different thematic climate solutions as we're doing today with sustainable food and agriculture. Currently, the Clean Portfolio Project is beginning the research and development of expanded clean portfolios with the advice of an expert advisory panel that will be geared both towards institutional and individual investors. We have a growing group of sponsors. We have right now new opportunities to be involved with this phase, so let us know if you're interested in learning more. The Organic Agriculture Revitalization Strategy is an initiative that seeks to take advantage of growing consumer and investor interest in organic agriculture, which is now a nearly $50 billion mainstream market, and use it as a strategy for revitalizing rural communities and supporting regional economic growth. It was developed by Croatan Institute and Earthwise Organics with initial support from Organic Valley's Farmers Advocating for Organics program. And OARS aims to identify business and investment opportunities in regional value chains and to mobilize capital to help build community health and wealth. Here's a list of our partners, and as you see, many of them are in the North Carolina area, and that's because our first pilot program was looking at Northeastern North Carolina. The first OARS related publication was the report Impact Investing in Sustainable Food and Agriculture Across Asset Classes, Financing Resilient Value Chains Through Total Portfolio Activation. That was back in May 2017. And the OARS pilot project focused on Northeastern North Carolina had an outcome of we published our first economic development prospectus for the region called Organic Opportunities, and you can download that at the OARSproject.org site. We're currently exploring implementation opportunities within Northeastern North Carolina with our partners, including growing food grade soy, increasing the number of organically certified broilers being raised for meat, continuing trials of organic cotton, grappling with labor shortages and uncertainties, and deepening our engagement with public health practitioners, as well as further developing appropriately scaled financing solutions to help farms transition to organic in a sustainable way. Additionally, we're applying our learnings from this pilot project to the work we're doing in collaboration with the Delta Institute on a USDA Conservation Innovation Grant focused on accelerating investment in regenerative agriculture, in particular with a pilot in the upper Midwest. So we are looking forward to bringing our organic agriculture revitalization strategy to other regions across the United States as well. So please reach out again to our team if you're interested in learning more about how you might be able to get involved. So of course, a few notes before the rest of our presentation. We'd like to remind everyone that this presentation and the ensuing discussion is for informational and educational purposes only and doesn't constitute investment advice. Investors should always consult with an investment professional before making any investment decisions. We also want to clarify something about the Clean Portfolio Project, that it's not pay to play. Today we're introducing 3 investment strategies that were included in our original Clean 15 portfolio. They are sponsors, but they were selected on their merits based on the criteria developed by the Clean 15 advisory panel. These criteria included being actively managed, having a track record of at least 3 years, and having an institutional quality, among others. Again, this year's advisory panel for the future Clean Portfolio projects may differ their requirements, but that's what they were chosen for. Again, the first Clean Portfolio was a Divest-Invest Clean 15 portfolio and identified 15 strategies across 5 asset classes that were commonly found in foundation and faith-based investor portfolios. The project now aspires to add more asset classes such as cash and hedge funds and infrastructure. The new phase of work will add additional strategies and be more diversified. In that first portfolio, we identified 10 climate solution themes. One of these was sustainable food and ag. As we've deepened this work in the area since 2016, and especially with OARS and the work we're collaborating on with Delta Institute, we're beginning to recognize that sustainable food and agriculture is not adequate alone to address climate change. There's a building area of work around regenerative agriculture that is explicitly able to mitigate the impacts of climate change. But sustainable food and ag is an important area, and that's why we centered this webinar on that topic. Intentional investments in food and farming systems can rebuild soil health, sequester carbon, and make farming operations more resilient to the impacts of climate change. As seen by the high interest in this webinar, there is a growing interest on the part of investors and farmers and environmentalists in organic and indeed regenerative approaches. So with that, I'd like to introduce our wonderful panel of speakers today. They will address financing resilient farm and food systems as a climate solution. First, Dr. David LeZaks leads the Regenerative Food Systems Initiative at the Delta Institute, a Chicago-based nonprofit where he manages a portfolio of projects that focuses on building a more regenerative economy. This year, he is also an RSF Social Finance Integrated Capital Institute Fellow. He designs disruptive infrastructure that will unlock substantial capital flows into the regenerative agriculture sector. And today he will tell us about regenerative agriculture and how it is an important climate solution, as well as innovative mechanisms for financing it. While the Divest-Invest Clean 15 included listed equities and and private equities. We're not addressing those today, but there are opportunities to gain exposure to sustainable and regenerative agriculture there. Today, our speakers will spotlight 3 types of strategies that cover real assets, fixed income, and private debt. Craig Wishner will start with, he founded Farmland LP in 2009 and is responsible for the day-to-day management, business strategy, and all investment activity. Craig is a seasoned executive with nearly 30 years of experience building companies of all kinds and has helped manage his family's real estate portfolio of apartment buildings for over 30 years. Craig serves on the board of BN Ranch, Bill Nyman's successor company to Nyman Ranch. Craig will talk to us today about Farmland LP and their real asset strategy. Alyssa Greenspan is the President and Chief Operating Officer at Community Capital Management, whose mission is to deliver superior risk-adjusted returns through investment strategies that contribute to positive environmental and social outcomes. Alyssa joined CCM in 2003 as a portfolio manager and was named President in 2015, and is responsible for managing all day-to-day activities and operations of the firm, as well as overseeing risk management, client services, and sales and marketing. Alyssa will talk today about how Community Capital Management has expanded their fixed income strategies to create impact in the sustainable agriculture sector. Dave Miller is the co-founder of and CEO of Iroquois Valley Farmland REIT. Rooted by its heritage in Iroquois County, Illinois, by his heritage there, Mr. Miller returned to his native farming community in 2005 after a 30-year career in banking and real estate financial management. And in 2007, he started Iroquois Valley by connecting a small group of family and friends to a 142-acre farm. Prior to seeding Sustainable Farmland Ventures, Mr. Miller held executive positions at Bank of America, Santa Fe, Southern Pacific, and First Chicago Corporation. His extensive experience in structuring alternative real estate investments led to the formation of Iroquois Valley Farmland REIT, the first private company in the U.S. to integrate farmland and organic food production using mostly mid-sized family farmers. Dave will tell us today about Iroquois Valley Farmland REIT and their strategies in real assets and private debt.
There we go. Good morning or afternoon, everybody. LeZaks. And it's been a real pleasure to work with Christy and Josh and the rest of the team at Croatan on this project and others that we're involved in. And they asked me to come here today to talk a little bit about my work and provide a little framing and context for the rest of the panelists and for the topic today. So to start, I thought I would, if anything, read this quote by Natalie Reitman-White of the Organically Grown Company, who I first heard this at actually the Croatan Forum a couple months ago in Durham, that you can't fix a broken food system with a broken finance system. And this really encapsulated a lot of the work that I'm involved in right now with a history of projects and work in the agricultural space, but also now kind of bleeding into the finance space to really figure out where the alignment is between these food systems, food value chains, and finance value chains. And we know that we can't have one without the other, and trying to figure out what those connections are, how we can better align them to get not only the climate goals, but the healthy food, nourishing food, the rural economic opportunities and development, and how we can really kind of create this future within and between these two systems. So why now? Well, in the next decade, we're going to see the largest intergenerational transfer of wealth and land. Investors are seeking more than just financial returns. And so I think that we started with SRI and ESG, and now we're looking at this whole variety of impact metrics that are around. And I think that those have started to incorporate some of the things that I think we care about on this webinar in this community. But I think we're also figuring out what that means and how do we define them. Consumers are becoming more and more interested in health and wellness outcomes, not only for themselves, but also in relationship to the products they buy and having a better understanding of what their money is being used to support. And not to make this too grandiose, but I think there are also national and planetary security issues at play. Whether we're talking about the statistics that have come out that says there's 60 years of topsoil or 30 years of phosphorus, the way that we manage our agricultural lands and its relationship to the finance system and sector really does have impacts and implications beyond our plate, and really starts to get to I think some truly planetary level issues. Luckily, we are seeing some bright spots out there, and so I say that in a bit of a scary tone, but also realizing that we are really have so much opportunity to do good work in this space. So that said, every day in the US, we lose enough soil to fill a train that's 116 miles long. And since the Dust Bowl in the US and the creation of the Natural Resource Conservation Service, so much of what farmers have been taught or helped to do is to manage their systems toward a value called T, which is the tolerable soil loss. And I think there's a lot of discussion in the more technical communities about what is that tolerable soil loss, and I think many are coming to the realization that there is no tolerable loss, and that we really can't afford to lose anymore, and we need to do whatever we can to not only protect this valuable resource that we count on for so much, but also rebuild it where possible. And a paper came out in 2017 that documented not only how much soil has been lost pretty much over the past 12,000 years across the world, and here this image is honed in or zoomed in on North America, but how much carbon we've lost out of that soil. So demonstrating not only the food and agriculture implications, the water implications, but also, of course, the climate implications. And the bottom line here is that we're no longer farming on a system that is really has these powerful and untouched or really pristine resources. We're farming a degraded system, and that's really where the term of regenerative agriculture has come in and has really been used more in the past couple of years. Is that while sustainable agriculture, looking at the roots of that word and how it was used, it's really focused on sustaining what is a degraded resource. And we know at this point that we can actually regenerate or improve upon this resource. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of capital. It's going to take a realignment and rejiggering of these systems, both from the agricultural side and from the financial side. But there are leading edge farmers out there who are doing this today, doing it now, and who are building soil. And I think it's looking to them to determine what this next phase of agriculture looks like. And it's also not rocket science. It's practices that farmers are doing today. And I'll just briefly go through the 5 main principles around soil health and regenerative agriculture. I don't want this to become an agronomy talk, but just so we all start on the same level, is the first one is to minimize mechanical and chemical disturbance. Second is to leave an armor or crop residue on the soil. The third is to increase plant diversity, so planting a number of different kinds of crops throughout the year and between years. Fourth, leaving living roots in the ground as long as possible, whether that be a variety of annual crops with cover crops planted on the shoulder seasons, or integration of perennial crops that have roots in the ground, living roots in the ground all year long. And finally, to integrate animals and insects into the system. And the more that we can build this biology and begin to shift away from chemically dominated systems into biologically dominated systems, we'll begin to really kickstart the uptake of carbon dioxide into our soils, to replace some of what we've lost, and to create these functioning ecosystems that we did once have and that we could very likely have again. And it's not only from the perspective of the carbon benefit and the climate benefit that is most important from these highly functioning agricultural ecosystems, but it's the rest of these ancillary benefits, everything from changes in the risk and resilience profiles of these farms to the delivery of both public and private benefits, and also changes in not only the quality, but the quantity of some of the farm goods that are produced using these. And so the science is starting to document what all of these different changes in these profiles of farms who are adopting these practices are. And we know that with a change in soil management, we also have a change in not only soil performance, but that those metrics also follow along across the entire value chain. So we're starting to see changes in not only risk and return, but also impact. And as we start to connect these agricultural value chains to financial value chains, we're seeing opportunities to be able to incorporate these soil-based risk metrics and other types of these risk return and impact metrics directly into financial transactions. And working as part of this USDA Natural Resources Conservation Innovation Grant, a long title that I lead from Delta Institute with 19 other partners across the US focused specifically on agriculture and finance for regenerative agriculture. We're looking at these financial and agricultural value chains and how we can better connect them. And so starting all the way from the top, from strategies that institutional investors can use down through the asset classes, and how, what the most appropriate mechanisms and instruments are that finance and investment can be used to build these more regenerative food systems. We also understand that as we go through this financial transition, there's roles for catalytic capital, for philanthropic grants, for government grants, and ways in which those can be integrated with other kinds of capital, including human capital, to create more integrated capital approaches to work across the value chain, from farmland all the way up through, really from field to fork, to get these more nourishing foods with better climate profiles to create healthier soils. And really, it's about transforming the system. And I'll go through 3 brief examples now about where within these financial and agricultural value chains we might begin to see some of these mechanisms and instruments come to play in the coming years. Starting really from the ground up, looking at integrating soil-based risk into farm lending. If you look at these 2 images here, one on the left that's using cover crops, they're planting green, they're using no-till, versus the one on the right that's using some pretty intensive tillage. My bet is, not knowing actually where these pictures came from or the farms that they're on, is that if we get to a bad drought year, the farm on the left, who probably has a much healthier soil, is going to be more resilient in the face of these extreme events. And when you look at agricultural operating loans, they really don't incorporate that soil-based risk anymore. So working with our partners at Croatan and others, looking at the ag banking sector and taking it kind of from the bottom up and the top down, and seeing where there might be opportunities to internalize some of that risk in lending decisions and underwriting decisions across the $100 billion plus agricultural capital industry. Number 2, if one of the primary principles of soil health and regenerative agriculture is this diversification, then we need more diversified systems. Then these diversified systems need a more diversified infrastructure. And that goes from storage to processing to distribution, because when we have these longer rotations, we have integrated animals. In most cases, in most places, we simply don't have the infrastructure that's necessary. And whether it's on the animal side, as you see this kind of mobile processing trailer on the left, or Anywhere around me in the Midwest, if you want to drop off a crop at an elevator, you pretty much have two choices. It's corn or soybeans. But if you have that more diversified rotation, we need to set up and invest in that infrastructure. Luckily, there's some great companies who are doing that now and who are building that from the ground up in many places. And as that infrastructure is there, we're gonna see more farmers who will be able to take advantage of that. Number three, this might be a little further out there, but there's some great cutting edge research that's happening right now that's connecting the agricultural operations and soil health to the care of the soil microbiome, how that soil microbiome actually affects not only the taste, creating better tasting food, more nutritious food. I think in one case is demonstrated by Organic Valley and a study they did with their grass milk line, but also connections to the gut microbiome. And just last week, a colleague sent me another reference relating to some research that was done, making a connection between the gut microbiome and brain and decision making. And so we're beginning to see this system about it's not only how we take care of the soil, how we take care of the plant, the soil, the plants in which we eat, but it's affecting ourselves and the way that we're seeing health outcomes. And in preparing for this, for these remarks today, it's not like I even have to look very far to realize what some of these market and investment opportunities are. Because just yesterday in the Food and Tech Connect newsletter, this quote from Nick Green of, "We're seeing stronger demand for products that promote healthy soil through biodiversity." And it's that pipeline of products, it's that appropriately structured capital that's needed to really begin to connect these agricultural value chains and take products that are created with care and through many of the practices that I talked about today, and bring them all the way to market. And we're beginning to see some of the coordination of capital and the appropriate patient capital, the integration of philanthropic capital and government. And it's going to take more of these integrated capital approaches to really bring the market around food and agriculture and these financial value chains closer together. And so these are just three examples that I tried to highlight today. But all of these are being packed into the analysis that is being led by the Croatan Institute as part of our project together with USDA support. And if the Croatan team weren't doing this webinar today, they'd probably be working on the paper. But in the next couple of weeks to perhaps months, we'll be finalizing this paper, and hopefully we'll be able to share it with all you soon. So I'm happy to take questions during the question and answer part of this webinar, but also I've listed my contact information here should there be any request after this. Thank you, Christy.